and welcome to Control Delete Tutorials. My name is Jason, and today we're going to be looking at spline modeling and how we can apply spline modeling to different organic shapes. So the first thing we need to know about spline modeling is that we are going to be working not in geometry but in shapes. And the way we work in splines, we work with lines and different shapes that we have here. So splines, kind of like polygons, work best when they are four-sided. So to show you what I mean by that, if I just draw out a four-sided shape and I connect it back here, which will close up the spline, and we go in the Modify panel here. So we see here we have a four-sided shape, and lines and shapes, they don't have a surface, they are just lines, kind of like edges. So here we have vertices or Vertex Mode, which allows us to select a vertex. We have Segment Mode, which will allow us to select a segment of our spline, kind of like selecting an edge. And then Spline Mode, which will allow us to select the entire spline, much like Element Mode would be. Now, if any of these vertices become broken where they're not connected, then the spline will only select the connected parts. So I'll show you what I mean here. So I'm just going to go to Vertex Mode, and I'm going to select this and this vertex, and I'm going to break. Now, if I go to Spline Mode and I select, the spline is no longer connected all the way around because these vertices have been broken. What that means is we have one spline and another spline that are part of the same object, line 001. Something else you might notice is that these are color-coded. So here we can see this yellow one, and here we can see a yellow one. All the other ones here are white. Now what that means is that this is the first vertex that makes up this spline. So if I select that, we can see here it says Spline 1, Vert 1 selected. If I select over here, it'll say Spline 2, so this is our second spline, Vert 1 selected. If I select the next one, Vert 2, Vert 3, Vert 4. All vertices and all splines have numbers assigned to them. If I want to move these together easily, I can turn on my snaps, right-click, make sure that vertex is selected as my snap, and I can move these next to each other. Now these are not welding, they're just on top of one another. Now the cool thing about spline modeling, let's say I want to apply a surface to this. Now I don't have to have these corners welded. As you can see here, turn off snaps, and I'm hitting S as the hotkey to turn on and off snaps. These are currently not welded, they're just touching. If they're pretty close together, another thing that I can do is use Fuse. So I can select both of them and select Fuse right here, and that will move them together. Again, they're not welded unless I actually click on Weld. But what's nice about splines, they don't have to be welded in order for them to make a surface. They have to be within a proximity. So if I go down here to Surface, the Surface modifier, okay, so I'm going to see that I've created a surface. Now right now, the surface I created is orange. If I look here, I can see the normal side, and here I'm actually seeing the back face. So if I right click and I say Object Properties, Backface Call, it's not going to draw the back face anymore. This is very important when you're spline modeling because I'd say 99% of the time when you make something with splines, it makes it inside out, which means you would have to flip the normals here to be able to see the side that you want, which this is what I want to see. So right now, based off of this threshold, it's welding any vertices together to make this spline. If I go back down to line mode, and I'm just going to turn on Show End Result, which will show what my spline looks like all the way through to my surface. If I go to Vertex, and I just take a vertex here and I just move this away from the other one, once it gets one unit, which is my threshold, away from the other vertex, hold on, let's make sure I'm only selecting one. See how the surface disappears? It can't draw that surface until it's within that threshold. So I just need to have them close or touching. So a lot of times I can just select those and say fuse, and it'll move those together and it'll fix my issue here. That's only the one of the benefits of spline modeling. Right now, creating this doesn't really do much for me. What's nice about it is I can add this patch topology. And if I look at this, right now I just see that I have 4 vertices. And I have 4 edges. But that's because it's still a surface. It's not an actual poly mesh. So if I right click and I say convert to editable poly, now I can see all of the polygons that it had actually created. And if I undo here and go back to surface, you'll see that my steps are set to 5. And if I go ahead and step back to where it was, that means that it's going to create from this point to this point 5 vertices. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then back to this one. So it creates 5 in between. What's nice about this is I could create 2 meshes, 2 different characters, or 2 different objects with different steps using the exact same vertices in my spline modeling. And if I convert both of these, so I changed one of them, we'll see that this one has 1, 2, 3, and this one has the 5 that I had before. So I'll undo back here to where it's a surface. You can see I have a step of 3. So why is this important for us for spline modeling? Well, splines allow us to do some other things. If you've used Photoshop before, you might be used to creating paths and using what's called a Bezier handle, or you might say Bezier. I'm going to be saying Bezier. So what I could do with these, if I select all of these and I right click and I say make these smooth tangent types, well, you'll notice that 2 of them smooth and 2 of them do not. These ones don't because they're not welded, whereas these ones are. If I select this one and weld, now it's going to smooth because it's been welded together and it knows how it can smooth between these. Okay, so if I go back to my surface is still going to follow this shape, and if I convert to editable poly, you can see that it builds my geometry here nice and smoothly between all these points because of these curves. But let's say I don't want to have just, boring smooth surfaces. Let me turn back off show end result. So let's say I want to right click and make this a Bezier corner, which means I'm going to get these 2 green handles. Now a corner means that I can manipulate both of these handles independently of one another. Kind of like that. Whereas if I select this one and I say Bezier, now when I adjust one side, it'll adjust the other side evenly. And I'm just going to put an edit poly modifier here, which I don't necessarily think this is a good modifier to use, but it allows me to easily show the update here. If I go back to surface and I show end result, show end result, I can turn up the steps here in my patch topology. You can see that this updates very nicely. If I go back here, I'm going to turn show end result back on. You can see that as this is adjusted, the change updates automatically. So I could convert any of these to Bezier corner and start changing these. But most of the time when you're spline modeling, you're working with basically wireframe mode. So you're not seeing all of this. You're not seeing that, and you're not seeing surface. You're just seeing these lines for the beginning. And this is the very basic of spline modeling, just creating a 4-sided shape. So something else that we can do. I'm going to go ahead and just delete that object, and I'm going to create a circle. So I'll create that. You can see it's already got, let me convert this to an editable spline just so we can see. If I go to Vertex Mode, you can see all this has is 4 vertices. Now I could go ahead and put a surface on here, and if I apply my Edit Poly on here, we can see how this surface updates, based on what I have, all the way down to 0, 1, 2. Now I don't want to have 1. I mean, actually, that's not bad. That just creates 4 quads, so never mind what I just said. So you can see how this kind of works. Okay, but let's say I wanted to create a cylinder. Well, if I go back to Editable Spline, I can select the spline and hold Shift, and I'll just shift and drag that spline up. Now notice how they're not connected. If we go back here, if I just show end result, all I'm getting is 2 surfaces. Just make sure backface call is turned on. And they're both facing the same direction. Okay, well let's say I wanted to connect these together. So I'll go ahead and turn that back off. So I could create line and turn on my snaps. And snap these in. Just kind of draw those in. And notice that it's trying to connect to some vertices here that we don't see. That's under the interpolation here. It tells us that we have 6. This is just kind of how I view it. If I turn that down to 0, I don't get any sort of interpolation here. So having this at 5 or 6 gives me a better representation of what my final object will look like. But it does create vertices there. So I could manually do this where I connect these one at a time, which isn't so bad to do. And again, notice it created it inside out. So I'll just flip normals, and now it's facing the right direction. Okay. But let's say I don't want to go through the hassle of connecting those. Well, I on purpose created this shape from this shape. So I took this one and I shift and dragged it up to create a duplicate. And when I did that, you can see here that I have a vertex and a vertex that are both lit up yellow. Those are the first ones. And if I go over here, you can see that one's number 4 and that one's number 4. Kind of moved it there. This one's number 2. This is number 2. And that's number 3. And that's number 3. Well, what's nice is there's this tool called Crosssection. And if I select that, and I click, and I click, it knows to connect these automatically because it's connecting these vertices based off of their numbers. And that creates my surface here. So I know what you're saying. Well, I've already got cylinders. I don't really need, to create cylinders. Well, what's nice is I can use this, and I can use spline modeling to create a bunch of other shapes fairly easily. And if I change all of these vertex points, which currently these ones are not welded, when it does the cross section, it's not going to weld them. And that's fine. We don't want to weld them. Vertices can only be welded to 2. 2 vertices can only be welded at a time. So I can't weld all 3 of these together. So if I tried to select that and say weld, nothing's going to happen because it can only join 2 segments together. But if I select all these and I right click and I say convert to Bezier Corner, that'll change my handles here. And you'll notice when I start to move these handles, if I want to lock the direction that I move them, I just click on my axis there and it'll lock it to that sort of movement. So it keeps me from moving it left and right now. And right now it looks like it's moving left and right, but it's actually just still moving up and down. So I can lock that in. So if I wanted to do something kind of organic, that might be trickier to model. I could easily do this with spline modeling. Oh, gotta click here to lock my direction. And this one will pull this way. Alright, so if we show end result, so I guess that wouldn't be that difficult to create maybe, but where this comes in really handy is creating some organic objects, like a character's leg or an arm. Now, I don't typically spline model an entire body, but I might spline model sections of the body. Perfect example of that is I can use my circle here, and let's say I want to create a very sort of organic leg. Actually, I'm going to use the line tool. So I'm going to draw out a leg, and I'm just going to click and just kind of quickly create this. So I'll start up where the leg would connect to the hips, and I'm just going to kind of create some very basic points. So let's say we have our knee here, and maybe we have a bulge kind of at the bottom of the pants. So if I click and drag, I'll automatically start a curve, which is nice. And so I'm just going to create, let's say, something kind of like that. Okay. Now, normally I want to create all my curves as I go, just because it's a lot easier. But I'm just going to right click and set some of these to smooth. And I'll leave some of these as corners. That way I'll get these kind of hard corners there. We'll make this kind of a cartoony leg. Okay, so I've created one there. Now I want to make sure that I use the same amount of vertices. So to do that easily, I can just take this and, you know what, maybe actually we'll go to the top view, and I'm going to rotate this. So I'm going to hold shift and rotate 90 degrees. I'm making sure that I'm in spline mode. And now look at this. Okay, so I had the left view there. Okay, so this is going to be the side of the leg. And so if I go into the front view, let's see here. Let me make sure I have this on the correct side. Oh, I'm actually on the wrong side of the leg here. Thought that looked weird. Okay. And I'm kind of building this to where it goes around the leg. So each one's going to be 90 degrees around. So if I come back to my front view, so this is the side of my leg, you know, I can make some pretty simple adjustments here. You know, maybe this part goes up, and maybe the knee kind of comes in the middle. And then the bottom of the leg, maybe that kind of bulges out a little and is a little higher. Now I'll just take these together, just change them up a little bit. Okay, something like that. All right. And that's a little bit wide now that I look at it. So I'll just pull that in a little. All right, so then we need the back of the leg. So if I go into my left view here, you know, maybe I have it to where the back of the leg here. So this is still the side, so the back is going to be back here. But I'm just adjusting these points a little bit so that it takes into account, you know, what I'm going to do with the back of the leg. Because all of the back of the leg kind of bulge out a little bit. So I'll go ahead and take this line again. I'm going to go into the top view. So this is actually the back of my leg. I'm looking at this the wrong direction because I drew this in the wrong view, but that's okay. So I'm going to hold shift and I'm going to rotate this 90 degrees or 180 degrees. And I'll move this back behind here. Okay, so that's going to give me this back part of the leg. So I'll just have this part kind of where it would be under the butt. And then the leg would kind of, you know, maybe bend in the middle. And I'm going to go ahead and smooth that one out as well. Okay, and we'll smooth that. That'll give me like a little wrinkle in the back of the leg. Okay, and then I need the other side of the leg, which I'm going to use the same one that I have here, which looks like kind of a mess from the top view, but I'm just going to rotate this 180 degrees. And I'll just move that to the other side of the leg. So this will be my other side. And so this is where the groin would kind of be. So just kind of adjust this. I'm kind of making these so they'd be kind of cartoony legs. I'll just change the way the bottom part here is kind of shaped. All right, and then in the left view, I'll just move these back so it kind of matches up with what I have in the other part of the leg. Oh, let me make sure this is the right part. No, moving the wrong one here. Oh, maybe not. Okay, that's the problem with working with splines, is that it's sometimes difficult to see exactly what you're working with because you're only working in wireframe mode. So just kind of line these up like I did on the other side of the leg. And if they're not the same, that's fine. Doesn't matter. All right, so something like that. So I've just kind of drawn out the different parts of my leg. So now what I can do is use this cross-section tool, and I can click. And since I've used the same spline all the way around, I can easily just connect these together. Now the tricky part is all the ones that the cross-section creates are all set to corner. So what I can do is I can select my main sections of my wireframe here. I can just move these out of the way for a minute. And I'll use my snap tools to bring them back. So I'm going to make sure everything here is welded. So I'm just going to select everything and say weld. And that'll make all the ones in the front light up yellow, which means those are all the firsts. And I'll just select everything, and I'm just going to go with smooth. Now I could go in and refine these. So, maybe parts of the legs are just getting too pointy. So I will do smooth first before I do Bezier. Because if I just do Bezier straight off, it does this. It doesn't really know how to make the angles. If I do smooth first and then Bezier, they kind of keep the same shape that smooth was. Then I can use scale, and I want to use scale based off of the used pivot point center. And I can scale all these at the same time until this leg kind of rounds out. Okay, so now we have the sections that go down. And if I wanted, I could do, let's say, right above where the knee is going to be. So right here. Maybe I want this to be Bezier corner. And now I can take this handle here, instead of having it go up first, I could have it come down if I wanted to, try to create some sort of wrinkle right there by the knee, or, decide how I want this knee to look. So now I'll take these parts, and all I need to do is turn on snaps. So I'll turn my snaps on and make sure that this is set to vertex. And now I can move these. So I'm going to move it from here to where it connected up here. So I'll move, and we'll see it snap. I'll make sure everything looks like it lines up, and it does. And now I'll just apply surface. There we go. So we get a very organic kind of shaped leg. And it makes it very easy. If I need to go in and make adjustments to it, I'll just turn on show end result now. And obviously This is the back of my leg, so I'll go ahead and rotate the whole thing around. Turn my snaps off. So I'll just rotate this 180. Kind of move this out. So if this were my front leg, or not my front leg, but my left leg, I'd be able to use that. And then if I need to change anything about it, maybe I don't like the way this comes up here, or if I want to change so if I select my vertex here, I want to make sure I get the right one selected, because remember there's two on top of each other here. So one is set as the corner one, and one is the one that goes across this way. But let's say I wanted to change this to Bezier Corner. Now I show end result. I can come in here and adjust this in case I wanted to maybe have my mesh, do something else. Or if I want to, fix what I did there to the leg, or if I want to easily adjust, this in case I want to have like more of a wrinkle here in the pants. I could easily add that in. That's one of the really nice things with spline modeling, is easily being able to go in and make those sorts of changes. And then the other nice part, which I already kind of showed, was if I hold Shift and I duplicate this over, I can go from having a lower poly mesh. So if I convert this one, actually I'll just apply the modifier. So this one is set at 5, this one is set at 1. And let's put an edit poly on both of these. And you can see I can create both meshes at the same time with spline modeling. So I'm going to do a second demo where I show spline modeling some hats. This was just a brief overview of spline modeling. I have a separate video that I've done a couple years ago, I think now, of spline modeling a gun arm. So go ahead and check that video out and see if maybe there's something in there that I don't talk about in this video. But that's going to wrap it up for this one. So I just want to say thanks for watching, and always thanks for the support. Thanks for liking things. Thanks for messaging me and letting me know how much you like the videos. And if you don't like the videos, let me know why so I can change those things. All right, thanks for watching.